Hi folks, my perspective here. The word andragogy comes from the Greek word man and the word agogos, meaning to lead a man. And we understand it today as simply meaning adult education. One of the aspects of andragogy is using experience to train someone. So experience can be understood in two different ways. So for example, a surgeon, he has real experience, hands-on experience. But you can also create a drama. You can create a scene. People can act out certain events or act out a situation, right? And by creating an experience, you can train someone. And companies and organizations do this. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's a good way of training adults. This person with a sled, for example, right, he will put his experienced dogs in the front and the other dogs will follow. And they will gain experience from the ones in the front. And it's an excellent way of training someone. So what's the problem then? The problem with andragogy is that it can also be used to train someone in doing what is bad or wrong. You see, for example, this dog, right, will act out certain scenes, will act out certain actions, and through this the dog will be trained to become an attack dog. So the dog doesn't think, the dog doesn't analyze the situation and think, well, is this right? What I'm being trained to do, is it right or is it wrong? Do you understand? For example, this young boy, by playing violent video games, he is being trained. He may not realize it. He's being trained. So when he finds himself in a certain situation, he will resort to violence. That just is what it is. So what's the difference then between real understanding and real understanding? What's the difference between training a human and training an animal? Well, with a human, it's evident and it's clear that we need to think about what we've been trained in. We need to question it and say, do I agree? Do I understand what I'm being taught? Is it in harmony with good principles? Because if we don't, then we're no better than animals. We can be trained to do what's bad without even realizing it.
Pansy the chimp's extraordinary skills with human language have led researchers to explore the little-known world of chimpanzee communication.
So the point is, you can use a monkey to train a chimp. And we're not animals, right? We're going to reason and think. That's what separates us from the animals. We're human beings. So we're going to look at this clip by this fellow who created this clip, and he says he has the top 10 dumbest flat earth arguments debunked. So we're going to analyze these and look at them.
I'm going to be taking a look at the top 10 dumbest flat earth arguments debunked. Maybe you guys are watching. Is very big, so to get all of it in one picture, you'd have to go pretty far out. That's exactly what the crew of Apollo 17 did though on their way to the moon in 1972. They took this picture of Earth at a distance of about 18,000 miles. It was dubbed the Blue Marble Picture. It's one of the few true non-composite pictures of Earth. The others are not fake, they're just composites put together using different lenses and different techniques.
And the monkey gay at the break of day loved to hear his chimpy say, abba dabba 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 dabba, said the chimpy to the monkey.
Right, so according to this fellow, right, they were far out and took this blue marble picture of the Earth. So, well, they're heading towards the sun, right? Because the sun's directly in front of them, because it's 12 o'clock midday on Earth. Means the sun's in front of them. And if they're traveling at over 40,000 kilometers an hour, they're heading towards the moon. they've only got windows in the front and the sides of the capsule. How do they take a photograph behind them if the rocket's behind them? So what phase is the moon in? Well, it's in its first quarter. How can you be heading to the moon if it's in its first quarter and take a photograph of the Earth and the sun's directly in front of the Earth? It's just, how did you do this? Also, how did you take a photograph if you're on the way to the moon is 5 degrees off the ecliptic plane? How did you take a photograph of the entire South Pole? You see, they wanted to show you the South Pole because it's important that you believe the Earth's a ball. But they messed up. Understand? It's chimp training. That's all it is.
If the Earth was flat, the horizon would simply not work the way that it does. One famous example of this is the ship's example. If you guys have ever been on a boat or just by the shore and you've seen a ship in the distance, you'll know that it doesn't just materialize on the horizon like it would if the flat Earth model was true.
What actually does it look like?
Monk. Dabba 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 dabba, said the monkey to the chimp.
Alright, so this is video footage from a ship on this ocean, and we see ships simply materialize on the horizon. And ships moving away don't bend over the curve of the ocean. They simply get small and disappear on the horizon. The opposite of what we are told by this fellow.
Instead, what happens is the tallest part of the ship appears first and then the rest of it as it gets closer. This only works if the Earth is round.
Now, this is what we are commonly taught, right? And it's so silly, it's stupid. Look, if a ship dips around over the curve of the Earth, then a hot air balloon must do the same. A hot air balloon which is higher must go faster because its arc is greater. Do you see this in real life? No, we don't. The same curve that exists from the front to back must be left to right. You would actually see aeroplanes flying over a curve from left to right. Because the same curve that is from the front to the back must exist left to right. Aeroplanes would appear to fly faster. Well, they would have to fly faster. You would see aeroplanes coming over the curve of the Earth. Now here's the real crazy bit. Think about it. If the ship or an aeroplane dips below the horizon, from your perspective, it must fly underneath you, not above you, because it's the same curve. It would just get bigger, but it would have to fly underneath you because it has to keep the same curve. Another trick is they'll say, well, you have to stand on top of the ball. It's the same thing. Do you understand? It's just a trick. We don't see ships curving over the horizon. We've never seen this in our life. It doesn't happen on Earth. Do you understand? It's just chimp. Use your eyes. This is chimp training. The ball Earth is chimp training. That's all it is.
At number 3 now, we have further from higher. This is kind of a similar one to our ships from earlier, but it deserves its own point. Anyone who's ever been up a tall building will know you can see further than you can on the ground. You may see a landmark that you just couldn't see until you went higher. Now, granted, this is off because there are things blocking our view on the ground, but even if there aren't, you can still see further. On a flat Earth elevation,
all night long they chatter away, all day long they were happy and gay, swinging and singing in the honky-tonky way.
Right, so here I have 2 pyramids. They're the same size. One's in the back, one's in the foreground. As you raise your position straight up, what happens to the landmass between them? It opens up. You see more of the landmass. So the horizon happens inside the human eye. Perspective and how we see it happens inside the human eye. And if you understand this, you'll understand that the plane you're on must be flat for this to happen.
Flat Earthers believe that NASA and the US government is lying to everyone about the Earth being round because it somehow gives them power or money. Somehow. The answers vary on that one.
He married them and very soon they went upon their honeymoon.
Right, so let's stand back and look at the big picture. The Earth, right, is spinning around the Sun at a phenomenal speed of over 400,000 kilometers an hour. The ISS is orbiting the Earth 17 times for every one Earth rotation, and it's traveling at a phenomenal speed around the Earth as the Earth travels around the Sun. Right? So how can this man be having this experience? So the ISS, for example, who took this image, right? This is not real. Someone had to photograph this. Think of the speed they'd be traveling at. And if the ISS is behind the Earth, well, the Sun can't shine on it. The Earth would block the Sun out because there's only one light source, the Sun.
If you have a decent enough telescope, or you ever get the chance to use one at an observatory over a period of time, you can take a look at some of the other planets in our solar system. What you will see is that the planets are rotating, and we see its surface change as it moves. If they were flat and rotating, they would suddenly look flat and then thin before coming back round to their full circular shape. That's not what happens. This is true for every planet and moon that isn't tidally locked due to gravity. The physics of our universe is what causes the planets to form and behave like this. Earth is also a part of that. And
right, so he's deliberately misleading here. No one thinks that planets are flat. Right. So if we look at the planets, right, let's take Saturn, right? It's spinning, right? Yet all the debris from Saturn forms rings. But the Earth is spinning, right? The same, they're in the same situation, yet they're completely different. How can the clouds spin in a ball, a perfect ball? Because the equator has to spin faster than the poles. How can they maintain their same shape? It's impossible.
it's at this point where reasonable scientific discussion based in facts we discovered thousands of years ago are pretty much pointless.
Right, it's pointless to ask this question: where would gravity stop the bicycle in this case? And if I have a magnet that's in a circle, right, and I have a ball, the magnet would pull the steel ball towards the center, but it wouldn't stop the ball from rolling around the magnet, right? Do you understand? Because the force is towards the center of the ball. So if I look at a bicycle, right, riding around a earth, the force is down. It wouldn't prevent the bicycle from moving backwards and forwards. The bicycle would still roll around the ball, right? So it's not the force of gravity would stop the bicycle. In actual fact, what would stop the bicycle is that it'd have to be on a level ground. So what we are taught simply doesn't add up, and if we question it, well, then they ridicule us for questioning it. And that immediately tells you that it's gym training.
discovered thousands of years ago are pretty much pointless. There's a very good chance we are all being trolled.
Right, so he's saying that we are trolling everybody, right? Is it logical to you, right, that we have modern technology, for example microwave technology, that proves the Earth? Right, so does it seem logical to you that they keep using Eratosthenes and a stick and a shadow and stick to this 2,000-year-old experiment that we can't even prove happened? Right? Does that seem logical to you? Or are we being chimped? We're being trained by a monkey.
As you accelerate harder and harder, that light blue Florida sky starts to get darker and darker, and then suddenly black. And the engines shut off, and you're weightless.
That's good, huh? Yeah, that's good.
Right, so the Earth's orbital path is in a circle. The space shuttle takes off from Earth, right? Its trajectory would be in a straight line. How does it keep to pace with the Earth that's travelling at over 400,000 kilometers in an arc?
Turn the handle and open the hatch. You pull yourself out into the universe, and now suddenly...
Well, if the Earth's spinning, right, the man's weightless. Therefore he has zero mass. In other words, there can be no velocity attached to him. He's floating. He would be left behind. So do you understand? It's not possible. He's weightless. Say he has no momentum. He'd be left behind. So they'll show us experiments, right, of a astronaut in the ISS hitting a water ball, right, backwards and forwards. So think about it logically. The ISS is supposed to be falling, right, at a phenomenal speed around the Earth. It's hooked into the Earth's gravity and it's falling at 27,000 kilometers an hour. Yet the man inside is floating and he can hit a water bubble backwards and forwards. Do you understand? If the ISS is falling, the man inside must also be falling. So must the water bubble be falling. So this stuff, just simply, it's magic, it's sorcery, it's not real. Consider the speeds. The speed should be constant. Yet we see video footage of the ISS and the speeds are all over the show. Do you understand how they just suck stuff out of the air?
For humanity, if you're the person who finds that one little fossilized flower on Mars.
That's good, huh? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, well, the problem is that for flowers to exist, they need to be pollinated.
For humanity, if you're the person who finds that one little fossilized flower on Mars.
So do you understand? They just make stuff up as they go along. It's just a song and dance.
In the big baboon one night in June, he married him and very soon they went upon their abba-dabba honey.
The theory that chimps imitate each other's gestures has led some primatologists to believe that this behaviour may have also been present in the ancient ancestors of humans, and may have led to the languages that we all use today.
Right, so we need to open our eyes and look and think. Otherwise, your training that you're receiving, you're like an animal if you don't question it. A lot of what we are taught is absolute nonsense. Not only is it nonsense, it's wicked. So I hope this makes you think. Cheers and thanks for watching.